The next thing you want to be doing to ensure that your team maximizes their experience is developing what I call family traditions or a family identity. You want to think to yourself, what are the types of things we can do on a mission trip so that we can build a family atmosphere amongst the team? This is really, really important. When people feel like they're family, they're more likely to be themselves. When they're more likely to be themselves, they're more likely to engage in ministry in an effective way. We want people to feel at home, so we want to cultivate a family feel. This is really important. Let me give you some examples of some things I've seen team leaders do to really build the culture of family or to build the identity of family amongst their team members. I've seen team leaders do things like every morning at breakfast, we're going to talk about this particular thing. So maybe your team starts the day off in prayer, and then at breakfast they get around and say, we're going to talk about what we read in the Bible and what we learned. I've also seen teams do things like every single morning we're going to have a funny question. Things like, what's your most embarrassing moment? Or even simple things like, what's your favorite cereal? Or, what's your favorite cartoon, your favorite TV show, your favorite movies, things like that. You want to be fostering an environment where people are having fun conversations. You also want to give unique names to ordinary things. I was on a team several years ago where we called ourselves the Paparazzi. I know it's silly and cheesy, but that was our nickname. We weren't just a team, we were the paparazzi. And everything was themed by the paparazzi. We didn't have prayer times, we had stalking Jesus times, where we would go off by ourselves. We would chase after stalking Jesus. We didn't have sharing times, we had publishing moments, where we would get up, we would publish the things we've learned about each other and the gospel. And everything revolved around this idea of the paparazzi. And the students that are on the trip, it was a high school team trip, and they really got into it. I mean, they just loved this idea of stalking Jesus and taking pictures. And they would go into these crazy elaborate stories, and guys would climb in trees. Side note, I don't recommend it, but they would do it. They would climb in trees and they would say, Kenny, I'm stalking Jesus in the tree, and I'm getting the perfect picture of him. And I mean, they would just come up with all these creative, random, weird things, but it was fun. We'd come to dinner at night, and we would pretend like we were the paparazzi, publishing the name of Jesus to the world. It was just fun. It really created a sense of comfortability amongst the team members. I've seen a variety of people do things like every night at dinner, we're going to talk about the roses and the thorns, the things we loved about today, the things we didn't love about today. Let me give you another example. I was on a short-term mission trip leading where there were 5 separate teams. The teams would do ministry separately, but they would all lodge in the same facility. Well, I always knew when certain teams were arriving. There was one particular team, whenever their team bus was arriving back at the facility late night to come back home to rest, I knew which team it was. I didn't have to look. I knew because every night they would be singing a particular song. They'd be singing the victory chant. Now, if you don't know the victory chant, that's okay. Basically, you are chanting in victory of what had happened that day, like the battle you had just won. And I knew that every time that team was arriving, they would be singing the victory chant. It was a part of their tradition. It's what they did every night on their way home. They sang the victory chant together. It created and fostered an environment where they felt like family. This is really, really important. Think about the types of things that you can do. What are the types of traditions or hobbies or songs, funny themes, things that you can do to implement to help your team feel like a family? You as the leader are responsible for this. If you don't do it well, it will not happen. Do not assume your team is going to like each other. Do not assume your team is going to enjoy each other. Do not assume your team will just dive right in and feel like a family. Quite the opposite is true. If you don't intentionally do something about it, if you're not a thermostat engaging and intervening in this way, it will not happen. So I want to encourage you, think about it now before you ever go on the mission field. Think about team names, team ideas, a team cheer. Every team should have a good team cheer that you do when it's appropriate. Side note, I wouldn't do it in the airport if I were you. I did that once. It didn't turn out so well for us. TSA are not a big fan of a bunch of teenagers shouting a cheer in the middle of the airport. With all that aside, I want to challenge you. Think about some of the family traditions, cheers, hobbies, games, themes, the variety of things that you can do to help foster an environment where your people feel comfortable to be family with one another. I promise you, it will make a dramatic difference in the quality of your mission trip experience. The next thing you want to be doing when you are leading your team on the mission field is making sure you're taking time out and giving great moments of inspiration and motivation. I refer to these as mini sermons or nuggets. Right? You're not giving them the whole chicken, just a little nugget. Right? You're not giving them a whole sermon, just a little bit of truth to help inspire them and remind them why they are on the mission field. Typically, throughout the course of a day when I'm leading a short-term team, I typically want to be giving anywhere from, let's say, 3 to 6 mini sermons or nuggets. Now, for some people, that may sound like a lot, but consider this. Your team wakes up, they come down to breakfast. They're feeling a little bit tired, maybe a little groggy. They're not quite in the mood to go out and be missional. You take some time out, you pray for your meal, and while they're eating, you get up and you give a little 3 to 4 minute nugget, a little scripture verse, a devotional, some story, something that inspires them to want to go out and do great mission. And then throughout the course of the day, you're out and about doing ministry, you're involved in some task. Again, people getting a little tired. Maybe halfway through the morning, you pause and you do it again. And then you do it at lunch, then you do it at mid-afternoon, and then at dinner, and maybe sometime later in the day. At any time when you feel like your team is slowing down, maybe being a little bit demotivated, being a little bit apathetic, maybe they don't have the same energy or the same inspiration, it is your responsibility as the leader to be the thermostat. You are the one that intervenes and does something about it. And the best way to do that is to give some sort of mini sermon, devotional, or what I like to call a little nugget. Again, it's not a whole sermon, it's just a few verses or a quick testimony, a story, something that's going to give them a spiritual shot of adrenaline. That's sort of the goal. Let me finish out this point by giving you a quote from the world-renowned motivational speaker and sales guru, Zig Ziglar. Zig Ziglar said this: "People often say that motivation doesn't last. Well, neither does bathing. That's why we recommend it daily." The reality is motivation will wane. People won't feel inspired all day long. It is your responsibility to continually motivate them all day long, every single day. Push them, inspire them, challenge them, rebuke them, correct them, captain them, coach them. Push them to be fully engaged mentally so that they can maximize their experience on the mission field. Give great mini sermons and nuggets all day, every day. The next thing you want to be doing as you are continually leading your team on the mission field is make sure that you are proactively solving problems. This is really, really important. As you go through the day, think to yourself, what are the potential problems that may arise with my team, and how do I fix this? There are a variety of areas where this comes up on the mission field. The one area where I find most team leaders really struggling with this is in the area of health and safety. You want to make sure that you are proactively problem solving when it comes to the health and safety of your team. Let me give you an example. And by the time I give you this example, you're going to think to yourself, Kenny's a little bit crazy. That's okay. My teams are healthy and safe when they're on the mission field. Something I do whenever my team is out to eat is I will go into the restaurant's kitchen. Yes, you heard me right. I will go into the kitchen of the restaurant to examine it. Here's the reason why. If we're in a country of Guatemala or Paraguay or South Africa or India or wherever we are in the world, as the team leader, it's my responsibility to make sure that team is safe and secure. And I'm not going to let them eat any food that I'm not sure is quality. So when we sit down to a restaurant, I'll typically just wander over toward the kitchen, look around, and just kind of pop my head in there. Most of the time, they look at me like I'm crazy. I've got 3 eyeballs, and they're wondering, what is this crazy American doing in our kitchen? But again, I don't care. My goal is to keep my team safe. It's my number one priority. So I just want to examine the kitchen. Now, I'm not a health food inspector. I don't have a degree in this, but I just try to use my common sense. If I see a bunch of stuff that's being dirty or a bunch of raw meat mixed in with the veggies, we probably don't want to eat at this place. I also want to then have a conversation with the manager of the restaurant and ask questions. I want to proactively solve the problem, because if my team eats something that can make them sick, we're going to have a major problem down the road. My goal is to proactively solve that problem before it ever becomes an issue. Let me give you another example. Again, you may think I'm a little bit overboard on. I typically love to have conversations with bus drivers. I like to have them really, really close. Whenever I'm having a conversation with someone who's going to be driving the vehicle that my team is in, I get really close to them. I do this because I want to try to smell their breath. I want to know if they've been drinking alcohol. I want to know if they've possibly been maybe doing some drugs. I want to get a feel for this person. So I want to look them in the eyes and have the conversation. Obviously, if they speak a different language, I'm going to need to bring an interpreter into that mix. But I want to have a mini interview, so to speak, before I let them drive my team around. I am proactively solving a problem. Another thing I do on vehicles is I wander around the vehicle and I examine the tires. I literally just walk around and I look at every single tire. I want to make sure that they look good. Are they bald? Are they spokes popping through them? Do they look like they're flat? I just want to make sure that that vehicle is safe. If I get in a taxi or a public vehicle, I want to check the insurance and make sure that that person has all of the legal docs and licenses they need to be operating as a driver in that country. As a team leader, it is your responsibility to proactively solve problems. Think about every potential scenario. As I said earlier in this video, don't prepare for what's likely. Prepare for what's possible. Anything that might possibly happen, proactively solve those problems and be thoroughly prepared. The next thing you want to be doing as you're leading your team is you want to make sure that you are getting rid of distractions. Force your people to engage. Now, you can do this in a variety of simple ways. Ultimately, I want to make sure that my people are fully engaged. So if we're going to do, let's say, a moment where we're having team debriefing, I don't want to do it in a very loud, noisy place. If I'm going to be preaching the gospel to a bunch of people that are nationals or natives there in that country, I want to make sure that they have the opportunity to be fully engaged. So things simple like when I set up to preach, I want to make sure the sun is in my face, not in their face. I want to make sure that we remove any potential distraction, whether it's for the people that we're ministering to, whether the team that I'm leading. Think about all the potential distractions that may arise and remove them. Proactively get rid of distractions. If your team is being distracted by something, it's because you didn't do a good job of proactively thinking about it. So on your trip, think through the schedule, think through all the things you're going to be doing, and think through all the potential distractions that may arise. And then start to think through, how can I remove those distractions? Now, are you going to be able to remove 100% of distractions? Probably not. It's probably an unrealistic expectation. But the goal is to fight hard, be creative, be strategic, be intentional, and do whatever it takes to proactively remove distractions that may get in the way of your team or the people that you're ministering to.